Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. Nigeria's maritime sector performance for 2019, like the global maritime business in the year, evidently points in the negative direction. Though factors that drove the local sector downwards seem not to be the same as those that aided the global maritime performance dip. As usual, lack of enforcement of maritime-related policies remain a bane of the industry in Nigeria, in addition to myriads of controllable factors such as poor seaport access routes, absence of truck parks, and ineffective traffic management around the ports, especially the country's busiest ports in Lagos. Joining us now to discuss this and other issues is Asu Beks, CEO Maritime Media Ltd. Asu Beks, welcome to the morning show.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's great to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Now, Nigeria probably has the biggest maritime resource in Africa. 852 miles bordering the Atlantic Ocean, over 46,000, square kilometers of, maritime boundary. And, 2 years ago, I think the Nigerian government took a decision to come up with a strategy to see how we can maximize our resources, downstream, midstream, upstream, for economic growth and development. This year has been an interesting one on all fronts for Nigeria. How have we fared in the maritime sector? Have you seen those expectations as defined by NEMASA, the maritime agency, met? Have you seen any progress? And if we've not made enough progress, why?
I think the biggest challenge to us as a maritime nation has been at the Gulf of Guinea, with security challenges. And the Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, has been trying to get some Israelis to handle that security. I think there's this $195 million loan which is still hanging because from the National Assembly, they are saying that it's not gotten the approval of Mr. President. But I think that we need to do something about the Gulf of Guinea. And so that goods coming into Nigeria will not, vessels coming into Nigeria will not be declared as high risk, if that's what we are facing now. Most goods, vessels coming into Nigeria are categorized as high risk vessels. And so our shippers, importers are paying higher than every other part of the world, to get their goods into the country. So we need to do more in the coming year to secure the Gulf of Guinea. Not too long ago, NEMASA hosted a global maritime summit in Abuja, where key players in the world converged to tackle the issue of insecurity in the Gulf of Guinea.
But there's been some talk about the anti-piracy bill. Where are we with that? Because you also need the proper regulatory legal framework to be able to check the insecurity challenge in the maritime sector.
I think that it's not about a bill. It's about the will of Nigeria to secure its maritime domain. I don't think it has to do with, the absence of a piracy bill. An anti-piracy bill, but with the will to secure our maritime domain. We are not doing enough. And of course, that also led to why we lost at the IMO Council elections recently. We lost to countries like Kenya, South Africa, Morocco, Egypt, and so we need to do more.
Talking about the will, you would agree that the maritime industry accounts for about 95% of vehicular trade for, vehicular means rather of Nigeria's international trade. Now, looking at the past few years, 2019 included, and looking forward, prospects for 2020 and the next 5 years, how would you rate the infrastructural development, looking at the roads, looking at the traffic congestion? How would you rate the infrastructural development, and how would you say it's either better or it hasn't changed?
We have to do more, concentrate on intermodal mode of transportation, because if you see the gridlock in Apapa today, it is because of the absence of rail track. And last year, my outfit, Maritime Media Ltd, we tried to bring together state governments that are developing deep sea ports, to say that, look, you can't talk about building a port without putting a plan, a railway into it. Even the Lekki that we are talking about now, I'm not aware that there's a rail connectivity. And so when you don't have, rail connectivity to your seaports, it's a huge challenge. And that is the problem we have in Apapa. When Apapa Tinker ports were built, those who planned that, they didn't envisage the kind of traffic that we have. And then, of course, don't forget also the tank farms that have also, come up in that area. In other climes, we are supposed to have a separate, dedicated, ports for, such cargo, like, petroleum products. But we have a situation in Nigeria where the tank farms are also within the place. And God forbid, if anything happens, the entire port will go up in flames.
Yeah, I mean, the connection between the ports and the inland territory is important. But isn't it the case that the ports that we have, the ones that are even functioning, that they are outmoded? I mean, modern vessels will require up to about 16, 18 feet draft. The biggest port that we have is just about 7 feet. Do you see that constituting a crisis for the future of the maritime sector? Because big vessels will not be able to come to Nigeria.
Definitely. That's why you see we are dedicating so much, to also the Nigerian Ports Authority into dredging. In other climes, where we go, we have droughts of up to 60 meters. Yes, and then, so that's why we need to encourage states like Akwa Ibom, Cross River, and even Bayelsa that are going to deep sea ports, And of course, the one for Lekki, of all the state-owned... yes, the one for Lekki is almost ready, and that's a natural disaster. So governments in the world are now going for areas where they have natural drought, that is deep sea, so that bigger vessels can come in and discharge their goods without delay, and then, get back.
Yeah, but when you talk of, political will, the will to make changes in the sector, how will you rate the performance of, say, NEMASA, for example, the Maritime Agency, and also, say, the Nigerian Ports Authority? Because new persons were appointed into those positions in the last few years. Have you seen any difference? Have you seen any effort? Have the agencies received enough support from government? And is there a realization that the maritime sector is strategic to economic growth, or we are just, paying lip service?
I'm one of those who believe that this is a specialized sector, and if you are appointing people to head, for instance, NIMASA, Nigerian Ports Authority, the Nigerian Customs Service, they should be career people. We have done too much of politics, even in our maritime sector, and that is affecting us. And so each time we go to conferences, global conferences, you see Nigerians, delegates, fresh hands all the time. And so I believe that we have, even within the APC government, we have enough technocrats that can run these places. If we have, for instance, a political board, a board made up of politicians in Nigerian Ports Authority, MPA, there's no reason for you to also go out to appoint managers who are entirely politicians. It's a problem. So, for instance, in Nigerian Ports Authority, we have Adiza Bala Usman, who is the MD. She's a politician. The entire executive management of MPA, comprising the executive director of finance, executive director of engineering, executive director of operations, they're all politicians. It does not spell well for this country. The same thing in NIMASA. The only difference in NIMASA is that we have one executive director who is an insider, the executive director of finance and administration. And then you go to customs. Oh my God, that is another ball.
So you believe there should be a complete separation? Politics on one hand.
Exactly. Get the professionals to run these agencies. You don't have that in NNPC. And so you see policies somersault all the time.
But do you think that's also because of the industry itself, looking at the amount of money that this industry sits on? Do you think that is a factor, perhaps?
No, but the maritime industry does not bring more revenue to us than the NNPC. NNPC is run always by professionals. Professionals. Now look at the customs. Look at the customs. It might interest you to know.
Isn't the oil and gas part of the maritime domain?
Exactly.
No. It's not. No. No. When we say maritime, we are not talking about oil and gas here. The oil and gas man, if I come here to talk about oil and gas, of course, he won't be happy that, look, my friend.
They get their oil and gas.
Yes, but there's a relation.
From the blue economy.
Yes, from the blue economy.
Yes,
from the blue economy. But then you have a situation where you have a Controller General of Customs who has a entirely military background coming into the system to fight corruption. You send him to EFCC. Because the customs, apart from NNPC and the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the customs is number 3 in terms of revenue generation. And so if you put the right caliber of people to man the Nigerian Customs Service, for instance, last year they talked about 1.1 trillion in terms of revenue generation. They are also, and I'm sure they will beat that mark this year.
Minister of Information already said that has jumped to about 8.1 trillion because of border closure.
But at what exchange rate? In 2014, the service under Abdullahi Diko made about 960 billion. And so at 197, when you now compare with what we have, you can imagine that.
So in other words, you are saying that, the leadership
is a problem.
At the Maritime Safety,
there are no scandals.
Maritime Aviation and Safety Agency and at the Ports Authority is dominated by politicians who do not seem to understand the sector.
Let me be honest with you. Dakuku is doing very well at Nemasa. Even though he learned so fast. In fact, the operators in the industry are surprised. The man learned so fast. Adiza is also not doing badly. But we are saying that...
Yourself.
No. There's no contradiction here. There's no contradiction here. But what we are saying is that if now they are also
yes, you know what?
Asu Beks,
I think let's do that. Let's take a short break. When we get back, we would properly understand your points.
We'll be right back.
We'll be right back. Yeah. Welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. And we have Asu Beks, CEO of Maritime Media Ltd, still with us on the morning show. Before we went on that break, you were trying to state the clear difference between what you said about how the industry is dominated by politicians. It is led by politicians. And you're not saying they're not doing a good job. You're just saying that you would prefer if they're professionals in this position of power.
Thank you very much.
You are helping.
Thank you for helping me. Because he was going to nail me. Thank you for helping me.
But I do have another question that I need to ask. With this desire in mind, how would you rate the appointment? Would you say it's a fair selection of leaders?
No. I think we have grown beyond that. We should do what is done in the other climes, where you put square pegs in square holes, round pegs in round holes.
So it's not a fair.
It's not fair. Selection. It's only at the Nigerian Shippers Council where we have Hassan Bello, who is the executive secretary of the Nigerian Shippers Council, that we can say yes. Most of the appointments are politicians, and it's not good for the maritime industry. And so that is why we have most of the challenges we're experiencing now.
So if it's not a fair selection, and a lot of the people in the positions of power are politicians, then how is that going to change if it's not a fair selection anyway?
Now, Mr. President has the opportunity, when these appointees run out their term, because I'm sure you are aware that new appointments are coming in, one after the other. I'm sure that Mr. President needs to take a second look at this.
Let's talk about cabotage. I mean, you monitor the maritime industry, and the cabotage law, when it was introduced in 2003, the expectation was that, it will result in the deepening of capacity, either with regard to tonnage or manning or shipping, coastal and inland shipping. How are we doing with that? How did we fare in 2019? And what are the gaps? Where are the gaps? with regard to cabotage.
Yeah, the major problem we have had with the cabotage, which was essentially to make sure we empower our indigenous ship owners. Yes. And of course, and so the CBFF, that is the Capital Vessel Financing Fund, was introduced. And since the introduction of that fund, not a single kobo had been disbursed. But I was at a stakeholder, a forum not too long ago organized by the Nigerian Shippers Council, where the Minister of Transportation, Rotimi Amechi, said from January next year, we want to hold him to it that the disbursement will commence. And so because we have most of our seafarers, our young graduates from schools, if you don't have that mandatory 1 year on board training, you cannot be on board a vessel because that is the requirement. And then we don't have enough vessels to put our boys. So that will mean that some indigenous ship owners will have the money to now buy their own vessels. It's quite expensive to, I don't know how much we have in the coffers of the National Maritime, NIMASA, as per the funds that have accrued. But I think that if we begin to disburse that fund, our indigenous ship owners who have been crying. Don't forget the money is not even theirs. It's not even, the money does not even belong to NIMASA or the federal government. It's a contribution fund from ship owners. And so I see no reason why that money has been there for these years without any disbursement. So we want to hold Amechi accountable. If by January next year those funds are not, disbursed. Okay,
but talking about, holding people accountable, I remember at the Day of the Seafarers, that was June 25th, there was the main conversation, one of the main conversations was the gender imbalance in the maritime industry. It was a big, even, the president's wife, Mrs. Aisha Buhari, she was actually speaking on that as well. And then NIMASA said something significant, that they were going to create avenues that would accommodate more women in the maritime industry. And I'm curious as to how that has been implemented or what progress has been made so far to see that that is actually done.
Well, as we speak, I doubt if we have up to 2%, more than 2% of women.
They said they have up to 95.
No. I'm not sure you heard right. 2%. Nigeria, just 2%. But I think that, I have a colleague of mine, Silvanus Obasi, who is doing this annual program that we want to get women into seafaring. It's an annual event, and so more women are coming. NIMASA is also doing something in that direction to get more women to come into, even the managing director of Nigerian Port Authority, Adiza Balance, she's also very passionate of getting more women to come into a seafaring. But I still also want us to go back to this issue of the customs. It's very important that we take a look at what we have in the Nigerian customs today, and that we cannot go on. If that is the third major revenue generating agent of this country, then more attention should be given. I tell you, if you live here, go out, find it and query. The controller of customs takes home maybe around 300,000 to 400,000. That is the most senior. And that is the least paid worker in NPA goes on. The cleaner in NPA goes on with about 200,000 naira. And that is what we pay controller. The man in Apapa who has rated about 414 billion as at 19th of December takes home nothing, less than 400,000 naira a month. It's a shame. It's a shame. I'm telling you.
So are you trying to justify corruption in the maritime sector?
Well,
you are saying, okay, if the controller is paid 400,000, don't blame him if he cuts corners. Well, is that what you're saying?
I'm not trying to justify corruption. I'm saying that we need to do more. If these guys can make 414 billion with a less than 400, 300, that kind of salary, that meager salary, what if you encourage him more, like you encourage those in the Federal Inland Revenue Service and those in NNPC? Pay them a living wage. Pay them a living wage. A man who spends about 35 years in the National Customs Service as a controller retires as a controller all he goes on with at the end of the day is about 7 million as a gratuity. Takes home
aren't there policies? Because I mean, there should be policies. It shouldn't be a thing of it shouldn't be a personal choice. Aren't there policies in place to state these facts? Like if it is 400,000, isn't there? Is that not what it is? It is stated, or is it being reduced? Is it being cut down? Is it?
What I'm saying is the government is a problem of the government, the federal government.
So the federal government has stipulated that 400,000 should go.
That's a way structure. So why the disparity?
That's an issue for the
that's why the disparity.
RMAFC.
Yes.
The Revenue Mobilization Allocation and Fiscal Commission.
Exactly. So that's something that they need to look into.
Will you then say the customs should be privatized so that they can get competitive?
No. You don't privatize the customs. Then you privatize the NNPC as well.
Okay, but let's talk about something else that is very important to people, particularly from the Niger Delta: pollution in the maritime environment. I mean, you've talked about insecurity in the Gulf of Guinea. You've talked about the situation of customs. You've talked about recruiting technocrats rather than politicians to lead strategic agencies. Now, how about this issue of pollution? It doesn't seem to be going away, and it still constitutes a problem in the maritime sector.
I see no reason, for instance, why the Ministry of Environment, the Federal Ministry of Environment, should be in Abuja. The Federal Ministry of Environment should be in any of the Niger Delta states.
No, because environmental issues are not restricted to the Niger Delta.
No. Because I'm saying so. I'm saying so because of the seriousness of the situation that we have on ground. Nobody is talking about the environment. All the government is after is how to get the resources from the people, and they don't care. I'm sure you are aware of the incident in Port Harcourt about the suit.
That's it.
Yes. That has been on. It's still on.
It's getting worse by the day.
It's getting worse. And so we want a situation where even if you cannot move, you don't move the headquarters of the ministry. Every Niger Delta state should have at least an office of the Federal Ministry of Environment. Because it's a very serious problem. Because these oil wells will dry up one day.
Yes. Is it just the office?
Not just the office.
Because the office doesn't change the suit in the air.
They hardly even visit. I can't remember the last time a Minister of Environment visited any of the Niger Delta states. It's a very
I wish we could continue for the rest of the day, but we'll have to draw the curtain here. Thank you very much, Asu Beks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.